and welcome to Trusty Chords, the podcast which aims to celebrate music and those that create it. If you've not yet heard of English trio tours, there's a very good chance that'll be changing soon. Formed by brothers Matt and Theo Weedon in 2016, the three-piece harmonic indie band were joined by drummer Jack Bowden after picking him up on Gumtree. However, the band's history can actually be traced back quite some years, with Matt's career as a songwriter beginning with a casual appearance of one of his tracks on the beloved TV show Skins. Fast forward a few years and a few bands, and now tours have been continuing on their world-beating journey, slowly building upon their fan base at each and every turn. It's probably even worth pointing out that Matt and Theo's grandfather, Bert Weedon, had a little bit of a music career as well, going on to influence names like Paul McCartney and Eric Clapton with his guitar playing back in the day. I mean, you don't become the first British guitarist to have a hit single without making a few fans in the process. The tours, however, they've been riding high in their continuing success, and earlier this year, they released their newest EP, Miracle. It's a gorgeous collection of tracks, and it shows a band who are comfortable with letting vulnerability in and ensuring that only the best music is shared with the world. Since then, they've been pretty bloody busy. After all, the last month alone has seen them play California's Bottle Rock Napa Festival, Tennessee's Bonnaroo, the Netherlands Pink Pop Festival, and a plucky young upstart festival called Glastonbury. You know, no big deal. They've also struck up a friendship with Aussie band The Ryans too, going so far as to trade covers after Tor's cover of Scary Movies caught the attention of The Ryans, who whipped up a version of Happy Enough in turn. This week, Matt Weedon was kind enough to join me on the podcast for a lovely chat about the band's history, their rise to fame, and if they'll be fitting Australia into their busy schedules. Anyway, I strongly urge you to check out Tor's latest EP, Miracle, and once you're done giving that a spin, have a listen to our chat, and I'll see you at the end of the episode for some general housekeeping. Matt Weedon, thank you for joining the Trusty Chords podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be doing this with you.
You're far too kind. So you're a musician who, as part of your band, has quite a following around the world. But for those who might not recognize your name, can you give me a quick few words on, I guess, who you are and why we're chatting today?
Yeah, my name's Matt, and I'm the lead singer of a band called Tors, T-O-R-S. And we're a three-piece. We kind of call ourselves a harmonic indie trio. And we're in a really special place right now as a band, releasing music that we love and getting to tour the world. And it's just a real pleasure to be on your podcast talking all things music.
Far too kind. You're going to give me a swell head with all these compliments you're giving me here. But this isn't about me. It's all about you. So with this sort of podcast, what I really love to do is kick things off by looking at the early days. So the question I love to start with is asking if you have a memory of when music first really resonated with you. Do you ever sort of remember when music really first sort of spoke to you as a youngster?
Wow, I love that. Yeah, I think there's maybe like a couple of instances. I mean, I'm really fortunate. My mum is such a great singer. Theo and I in the band, we're brothers. And, you know, we were so lucky growing up because our mum would sing all the time. I mean, she just sort of makes songs up and just, you know, you get your classic nursery rhymes and things like that. But I can just remember being very young and mum making us laugh or smile by singing to us. And that was always like a beautiful way to communicate. And then as we got older, like something that kind of sticks with me and my brother is, you know, every time we'd sort of sit for dinner, like our parents were big believers in, you know, sitting together as a family and having that time together. And every time we'd sit for food for dinner, my dad would put on different records. It's kind of like his passion. You know, we had like a tape player, then he got a vinyl player, then he had a CD player when they became a big thing. It was very funny. We've been through every transition. He's still got every tape, vinyl, and CD possibly he's ever bought, which is hilarious because he doesn't use a lot of them now. But, you know, that really stuck with me and with my brother. And I think growing up listening to such a variety of music was, I don't know, it was really inspiring. And when I listen to music now, it makes me think about being with family or loved ones and sharing, like, you know, having food and just sort of like nice times.
So does that mean there's, you know, if you ever have sort of like, you know, it's Sunday roast served up, you start thinking about the Beatles or something, you know, what would always, you know, be on the playlist for the meal?
Yeah, big time. I love that. Sunday roast.
Because one question I also ask as well is, if there were any particular artists that you would have listened to a lot in these formative years. But I mean, I was also, I'd be remiss if I didn't do the old Wikipedia thing. And I was seeing how both yourself and Theo come from a bit of or a musical family in the terms of in the way of your grandfather. So I guess there
Yeah.
would have been a little bit of, I mean, it makes sense that music was such a prominent thing within your family. I mean, was that something that influenced you in those formative years?
Oh, hugely. Like, I mean, it's probably one of the biggest things. Growing up, our granddad, he was called Bert Weedon, and to us, he was just granddad, and he was incredibly funny and incredibly naughty, which we loved. He had like a very silly side and just used to make us laugh the whole time and do silly things in public. But, as we got older, and we started to like realize who he was and what he did, it was just so powerful. He had this beautiful room in his house where he had put all his guitars out and it had a little bar in the corner, which we thought was cool. And he just, the walls were covered in photos of him hanging out with everyone, the Beatles, Brian May, Clapton, I don't know, eh, all these legends. And we used to sit with him and he'd play guitar and he'd teach us things and we'd play stuff back for him. And kind of it was inspiring because we're like, wow, if Granddad did this, he could make all this happen, then maybe we can. Um, so he was always so proud of us. And, he passed away a while ago now, 2012. But I'm pretty sure he's looking down and he's really buzzed for us and all the things that are happening.
I mean, I can't see any reason why he wouldn't be with the sort of career that you guys have had already. And I guess that also leads into the what I was going to ask next, which was how did this love of sort of music translate into forming what we now know as tours? Where did this inspiration come from? Because you obviously mentioned yourself being like you use the word harmony sort of in the opener that you described yourself as.
Yeah.
So where do you sort of go from listening to music with meals to seeing your grandfather's music career and then starting your own?
Yeah, great question. I think it's really funny. I hadn't thought about doing music personally till I was probably, I don't know, 15, 16. And I was doing guitar lessons because of my granddad. And it was like a really nice way to bond. And it was just a cool thing to do at school, to miss a lesson, you get to go and do a guitar lesson. So it was like, look, definitely do this. And really, it was down to my guitar teacher, this guy called John Small, who was really funny. He's got an amazing band called the Honest John Band. And I remember talking to him. We were just sort of playing songs. And I'd started a band. We were playing covers, and we'd always chat about stuff. And I think we were chatting about this. Maybe there was a girl that I kind of was into, but didn't know how to tell her. And I remember him just saying to me, he's like, "Why don't you write a song?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "Well, just write a song because it's kind of impressive." And I was like, "Wow, how do you write a song?" He's like, "You just play some chords and just you listen to other songs." He's like, his advice would be you'd play all these covers, figure out what they do, and try and do your own thing. And I remember going home that night, and I wrote the first song I ever wrote. I think I called it Moonlight. I can still sort of remember the melody, but not. I'm pretty sure I nicked a bit of the melody, but it was so crazy. And then I remember building up the confidence, going and showing this girl. She was super impressed, and the rest was history. But I remember getting this bug for it and being like, "Whoa, what was that? That was so intoxicating." And it kind of just got the bug. I remember literally, I had just signed up at that point. I'd signed up to go to film school. Um, and I cancelled my application and my place, and I decided I was going to get into music, and that was the thing that set me on my path. And I moved to London, and there was, I don't know if you guys had it in Australia, but there was a TV show called Skins,
Oh yes,
um,
yes, very very
that was
popular down
really
here.
big
Yeah.
here. Yeah, it's an amazing show, and I remember going to uni and being like, right, how do I get into music? How do I make this happen? And there was a competition where it was like submit a song and you might get played on the TV show. And I was like, wow, what worth a shot. So I put a song in called Jenny Jones. Um, and literally, I think the next morning, I put it in that night. The next morning, the head of the music, this guy called Alex, who was a legend, had emailed me and said, we need to jump on the phone. And I said, yeah, sure. And he called me and he was like, look, we love the song. We want to use it in an episode, maybe two. And I was like, oh my God, it's incredible. And they put it in the show. It went really well. People reacted well to the song. And he was like, "Have you got a band?" And I was like, kind of." And I just started playing with some mates at uni who I'd met there. And he was like, "Well, look, we love what you do, and we think you're a talent. We're going to set up a record label and sign you to this label." And I was like, "Wow, this is crazy." Um, and literally, I think 6 or 7 months after going to uni, we were like, "Okay, we're going to drop out and go on tour." Which I don't know if my parents were happy or not that I did it, but we did it, and it set this band called Paper Heroes. It was the first thing I ever did. And we signed to this TV show, and they put a couple more of our songs on the show, and we played skins parties, and we toured the UK, and it got to this amazing point. Um, Sorry, this is a very long story. I
Oh, by all
apologize,
means,
but I just realized
I love long stories. Go ahead.
so I get to this point in the band and things are going really well, and we've been going really strong, and we've been offered a deal. You know, lots of things happen. I decided to do something different. I got into the songwriting. I go and work with a different team. I step away from touring because I wasn't sure about it. And I'm living in London, and Theo, my brother, who's in tours, he moves in with me. And at this point, I'd stopped performing and kind of doing as much music as I was. And he kind of was like, I'm sad you're not doing music because I think you've got this thing for it. And I was like, I'd kind of lost the confidence, if I'm honest. I don't know why. Just things had happened. You get knocked back, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to put myself through it. And Theo was like, well, look, if I help you, do you want to do it? And I was like, well, yeah. I was like, if you do it with me, maybe. We're very close. Like, really, he's like my best friend. Um, and Theo had been playing in bands. He's like the lead guitarist and sings harmonies, but he'd never really um, done a music project. He'd done some comedy. He was a comedian. He'd been doing a stand-up comedy thing with a friend of his, which was incredible
Mhm.
and had done really well. But what he'd studied at uni was song script writing, sorry. And Theo is like this genius with lyrics. And it was really funny because I sort of said to Theo, well, we got to write a song. Why don't give me some lyrics. I'll try and write some music. And he just the next day he sent me these lyrics that were just so like incredible and beautiful. It was a song called Best Thing. And I just couldn't believe it. And I wrote this song really quickly and I showed him and he was blown away. And we both like, hang on, this feels like this is a moment. We should be doing this. So we set up this duo called Moon Brother. And again, really lucky, a friend reached out and said, oh, I need some music for a campaign for a company called Jack Wheels. It's like this clothing brand. And she was like, could you write a song? So we ended up writing a song called My Friend, which went really well. We put out and people loved it. And that led to us getting like a management deal. And then that manager was the longest story of getting to how tours were formed was like, you should have more of a band. Don't just be a duo, which we were at the time. And so we were like, yeah, this feels like the right thing to do. So we put an advert out on Gumtree and Jack applied because he was moving to London from where he had been living. And we met him in a pub, sank loads of pints together, talked about music, what we love. And we hadn't even heard him drum. And we're like, you're in the band. We think you're great. Um, and that was literally how tours started. So that was probably the longest winded story I've ever told. And I apologize for
It's
taking up all your time. But
You are fine. It's probably the most fascinating story I've had in this podcast so far. Because usually if you go into Gumtree or something, you usually end up with an old couch, not a drummer. So
yeah,
that's,
yeah,
I mean, it is quite amazing to sort of hear it all sort of like that. Because I mean, obviously through a bit of research, I knew sort of the bare bones of that. But it's quite wonderful to hear how I mean, a show like Skins that was so influential for so many
it's
music
crazy.
lovers. There was the soundtracks were just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, you look at the artists there, it's like a
So
who's
good.
who. And I mean,
Yeah, it
obviously that
really
must have been
is.
special for you to be on there and have that sort of serve as a bit of a launch pad into where you are today. I mean, that's amazing. That's all I
Oh,
can really
dude,
say.
it is. Yeah, I think these things, and I highly encourage anyone to use any services. There are some amazing things out there, and it's funny because you think, oh, should I enter my song into a competition? Should I enter that? Should I do this? Like, just do everything. It's kind of like you never know what's going to happen when you open that door and step through it. You don't know where it's going to lead. So that was an amazing opportunity, and I think that's been a big thing with tours. Like anything that's come our way, we've been like, let's give this a go, let's see what happens, and it's led to some incredible things.
obviously you had a little bit of I guess momentum, for lack of a better word, in those sort of early years, and then when you started off tours, I mean, so I guess when a lot of music fans discover an
Mm,
artist, that they tend to only find them when they start releasing music or they start playing higher profile shows. Having this bit of momentum
yeah.
in your back pocket, how did it help with those early days in finding an audience and finding a fan base? Was it quite easy with the sort of history that you had, or was it a bit like starting over with a totally new band?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's funny enough, it was kind of like starting over. Because there was like an old fan base from the first band, but I think I kind of deliberately separated myself from that. Had sort of, I don't want to say like push back, but I was like, this is a whole new thing. This is me and my brother and Jack, like the three of us. And towards at that point, we actually had a couple other members because we were just, it took us a while to really find who we wanted to be. And it was really like an interesting process. I think with the first band I had, the songs, I was in control of everything. I was writing the songs, recording the songs, and the band kind of just did what I said. And I don't, not like I was a dictator in the band, but it was just like, hey, I've written this song. These are the chords, these are the parts, and everyone was like, cool. And then with early tours, everyone, I was sort of like everyone had an input, everyone had a say, everyone had like their own way of doing things. And it just took a while to be like, okay, this is who we are. I had a lot of songs at that point that I was bringing in and we were trying. But, there were five of us at the start, and that was it. There were like 5-part harmonies, which were crazy. It was almost too much.
Bit
um,
overwhelming, yes.
and we were like, this is getting crazy. Um, and we just kind of took some time. It took us a couple of years, if I'm honest, to really find what we wanted to be. And then, a couple of members left for different, someone finished uni and went off to be a dad, and another guy was doing his own thing. And then it took for us basically becoming the three, how we started, Theo, Jack, and I. When we came back to that, we really suddenly were like, oh, this is what feels exciting. And we started to then release new music then, and that's when it really all started to go well. It got really exciting for us until, of course, COVID hit, and then everything stopped for 2 years. But apart from that,
Well,
you know,
yeah, that's
it
probably best forgotten, really, in the grand scheme of things for
yeah.
musicians, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, was there a specific moment for you where you sort of remember thinking, all right, this is getting a bit out of hand. We're getting a bit of, again, momentum comes to mind. But, was that ever sort of something you thought of where you started realizing, okay, this tour's probably, we're on the right path?
Oh yeah, that's such a good question. There's been like so many moments. I mean, recently it's been really crazy. We've been so fortunate. We've kind of been on tour for the last year and a half. A moment where I think, wow, I mean, we've done so many shows where I think, things have really stuck out for us. Our first London headline show was at this amazing little church called St Pancras. And that was incredible. I think it's to be fair, I think we did our biggest London show just before COVID was one at a venue called Scala, um, which was amazing, and that was a moment where I thought, oh my God, this is happening. This is so crazy. We had fans flying in from around the world to watch this show in London, and then obviously, like I said, unfortunately, COVID hit, but we still throughout COVID were so lucky to have these fans reaching out and following us and joining live streams, and then as soon as we got back on the road after the COVID thing ended, it was just this magic feeling of like something is going on. And then, being really honest, like last year we were very lucky in having some viral moments on social media, and that kind of exploded everything and led to us landing some big support tours, which then led to us getting our record deal last year, which, then let us make a record in America, which led to us touring in America and our own headline shows. And I mean, I can't really put it into words how much the last year and a half have meant to us as a band. It's just kept us going, and it's really exciting and nerve wracking all at once.
'Cause I mean, even just looking at the list of gigs you guys have had in the last, month. I mean, you've had things like, Bonnaroo, Pink Pop, Glastonbury. I mean, that's bloody hectic, no
Oh,
matter how you slice it. I mean, is it a bit
yeah.
overwhelming to have that on the schedule, or does the gratitude sort of overcome that hecticness and sort of make it much easier to deal with?
Yeah. Do you know what? That's a great question. It's kind of uh, the way we kind of deal with things. We like to say yes to everything because we're so grateful for the opportunities. Try not to think about it too much because like obviously it is a lot. And it's funny because you think this is something you've dreamt of your whole life, but the reality to like touring and traveling is it can be really hard. You know, we flew from we did Bonnaroo and then a bunch of other US festivals and flew straight home for 2 days. Then we flew to Pink Pop and then back for 3 days before Glastonbury. And it was like a fever dream of like, wow, it's like we just played this incredible festival down in Nashville in the heat. Then we're out in the Netherlands playing this incredible like pop festival, and then we're in the British countryside playing Glastonbury. And all of it's just like you almost sometimes don't get a moment to take it in because you're on to the next thing. So, you know, we're lucky this month and we're in July now, and we've got some time just in the studio for like 3 weeks before we're back out on the road. And I think I'm just going to take a few days to sit there and be like, that just happened. That was so
Yeah.
insane.
So, and I guess on that topic of, music and everything, I should touch on the fact that, there has been a new EP earlier this year, and it's obviously it's a pretty special listen. But, I would obviously love to know, what does an EP like this say about who tours are in 2024? Like, what are you sort of wanting the listeners to take away about, who you guys are as a band?
That's it. I love all your questions. Are great, Tyler. They're
That's
so
that's what
good.
I'm here for, mate. I'm all about the good questions tonight.
Well, you know, I think it's really funny. This EP for me and for the boys, this is the first time we're feeling really kind of honest in our music. And I mean, we're excited. I think if there's anything we want people to take away, it's just to be excited about what's coming because, you know, what we got to make this record out in Woodstock. So like upstate New York, and we got to work with like one of our dream producers of all time, this guy called Simone Felice, who has made, you know, the Lumineers albums. He's worked with Noah Kahan, Vance Joy, like the guy's a genius. Um, and he's been on our hit list forever. Like, I remember saying, if there's anyone we could work with, I'd love to work with him. And I'll just tell you a quick story. I say quick, it might not be quick. I'll try my best to be quick, Tyler.
That's fine. We've got time.
But we said to our manager, you know, we'd love to work with this guy called Simone. And he was like, oh, I have a way to reach Simone because Simone, there's nothing online. You can't just like reach out to him because, you know, he's been working a lot and he's done very well. And I think he doesn't really just want to work with anyone sort of vibe. But luckily our manager managed to get some songs to him. And this was probably this time last year, actually in July. And I remember my manager calling me being like, oh my gosh, like Simone loves these songs. He wants to do a Zoom call. And I was like, what? Freaking out. Like, I can't sit on a call with Simone Felice. This is wild. Then we were driving to Cornwall, which is southwest England, for a festival. And we're in this splitter van and we jump on this FaceTime and there's Simone Felice. He sat with all these gold and platinum records behind him. And he's this like cool dude, this big beard. We call him like the mountain wizard. He's hilarious, lives in the Catskills. And he was just there on the school and he was like, yo, dudes, I totally get what you're trying to do. He's like, I feel like you want to be this huge, you know, stadium band, but you've got these vulnerable songs. He's like, it just makes me so excited. We need to get in the studio. And we were kind of like, this is crazy. And then the next thing we know, we were flying out to Woodstock to go and make this record for our first trip. I think it was like 8 or 10 days, our first trip. And we drive straight up to his house. He's got this incredible home and he invites us in and we sit there having a beer and we sort of start playing in one song and he loves it and he starts changing some bits. And the next day we're in this incredible studio called Applehead and we're cutting a record and it's just like, what is going on? It's so surreal and so exciting. And I think that, you know, you can, for me anyway, you feel it in the music. That first song we did was a song called Happy Enough. And what he did and what we like, you know, what he helped us achieve is what we call true tours, where we were trying to be a band again in the studio and really record everything organically. You know, they had this incredible drum kit, these incredible amps, the synths, everything is made in that studio. Like there's nothing we've just done, you know, using the computer. Even like the sub bass, which we often just program, like we're recording on like this incredible organ and just using the bass notes on that. And this record for us was just so exciting. I think it captures a moment in our trajectory as a band of just like we kind of figured out who we are right now and who we want to be. And so this EP is, you know, it's something we're very proud of. and we're really lucky that people are loving it. And we're kind of just excited to start putting out even more music, if I'm honest.
Actually, honestly, it's just so amazing to actually hear artists who are just able to sort of do what they want to do and achieve the sort of goals that they want to achieve, just like you are sort of doing with an EP like that. It it makes my heart feel good. You know what I mean?
I love that, man.
it's just it's wonderful to see musicians doing good things, and you guys are doing good things. And I guess on that topic of good things, obviously, I'm assuming that more music will be sort of on the way at some point. But I guess I should, I should ask the question: is there any chance of a sneaky trip down to Australia at some point?
Oh, like, I mean, I can't, yeah, 100%. You know what? Like, I mean, I don't really know. I never know what I'm allowed to say or not allowed to say. Like, I can say 100% we're coming to Australia. We were meant to be coming sooner than we wanted. We really wanted to get out with some amazing things, but, just things happen and life happens and you have to move things about. But Australia is one of these like special, special places. And we feel, I don't know, this is the crazy thing about music, right? And I'm sure you get this. It's like for us, and this is kind of partially thanks to social media, which, that's a whole other conversation. It's a blessing and a curse. But because of these moments we're having online, like we have a fan base around the world, and we kind of, we put out stories on our Instagram or TikTok, and we're like, where would you guys want to see us? And the amount of times people are like, please come to Australia, and we're like, we have fans in Australia. Like, who knows tours? But people do, and we're like, this is amazing, and we're such fans of like, there's so many Australian musicians that we like love. I remember one of the first gigs I went to when I lived in London. Like I went to watch Matt Corby do a private show in this like 100 cap venue, and like that
Wow.
guy's voice is just like it blew my mind. And I was like,
Phenomenal,
who
yeah.
is this dude? You know? And we were really lucky last year. We got to time of tour with Lime Cordiale, who are like the coolest dudes ever. So funny, so gracious, so talented, and just like an amazing energy. We've been on the road. Who else we did? We did some shows at Hollow Coves, who I think is super talented. We're huge fans of Sons of the East. So I'm going down like a whole other thing here where you just opened the doors of
Oh,
Australia to
it's
me and
fine.
I've got excited. But it's like there's a lot of I think the music scene there is very exciting from our perspective anyway, and it's somewhere that we want to come and spend a lot of time and just get to be. It's a beautiful country, and it would be really exciting to come and do some shows and even do some recording down there. I think it'd be really fun. So yes, an incredibly long-winded way of saying yes, we would love to get to Australia.
No, that's completely fine. And I'm sure once you guys finally do get down to Australia, Australia will make it more than worth your while. So definitely keen
Oh,
for it.
yes.
So I guess in the interest of time, we should get down to the final segment of the podcast, which is the trusty chords segment. So for anyone listening who isn't aware of this already, this segment takes its namesake from the general 1, 3, and 5 structure of a chord. So in this section, I ask you about one artist that's impacted you, 3 albums that have influenced you, and 5 songs you can always turn to. One day I'll get that down to a nice 1 sentence explanation. But in the meantime, I should ask you the question, who is one artist that has inspired you the most, whether it be personally or creatively?
Yeah, I mean, this section is so cool, but it's also so stressful to pick
It's a
one.
difficult
But I
one for
like that
sure.
because yeah, but you shouldn't have too many. So, I mean, I think it's kind of funny. In fact, I could probably pick one artist and some of their albums and their songs and just stick with that, even though there's so many. But you know who? I mean, this is because I've just been at Glastonbury this weekend and they put on the most incredible show. I think I'd have to pick Coldplay.
Yeah, right.
Um, they just it's really funny. I don't know how you find it with I don't know if you like Coldplay or not.
I'm a fan.
No
Yeah,
judgment.
I'm a fan.
Yeah.
It's especially those first few albums. They I loved them when
Oh,
they first came
dude.
out. Yeah.
And it's funny, like they get a lot of hate in the music business, but the truth is it's like those guys are just so gifted. And I don't think there's any other band really, maybe the Stones or U2, but they can tour the world and sell out stadiums everywhere. And I think that's just so inspiring. And I think what I find even more inspiring sometimes with Coldplay is the fact that even with those first few records, like they were never like they didn't have loads of hit singles. They weren't like hit number 1 songs. They're
Mm.
just such good songs that have gone across the world and people have connected to. So maybe let's go with Coldplay as like the theme of this.
I was going to ask you the 3 albums, and I mean they don't have to be albums from your one artist, but they can be if you like to go that way.
I think, well, I mean, definitely if I were two albums that I mean that I have to pick from them, Parachutes and A Rush of Blood to the Head.
Hmm.
I think, I listen to Rush of Blood to the Head probably. I genuinely say once a week. Um, yeah, it's just there's something about it that it it has everything I think a great record needs to have. It has like moments to let you breathe, but it has this exciting energy. And I think it feels really raw, which I think is always such a weird word to use when describing music. But I don't know. It's like it's a band playing, being a band. It's kind of like very inspiring for us. We're always trying to recreate that record in a way where we're like, how do the drums sound like that? And the mix is so cool, and there's not too much going on. It feels, but yeah. So I would pick those two albums. Um, for sure. And I mean, if I had to go for a different artist, maybe just because I should, although maybe I'd probably pick Pet Sounds by the
Hmm.
Beach Boys.
Absolute classic.
That
Yeah.
has is one of my like favorites. You say we're choosing five songs. I could choose one of theirs for sure in that section. But that record is just so adventurous, so inspiring, well, I don't want to use the word crazy because I don't mean to take away from it, but it's just like wow, the first time you hear that, it's like a trip. You're like,
Hmm.
how did you think of these parts? How do you think of these things? The melodies, the way the instrumentation on it, you're just like, this is so cool. This is such an incredible record. Um, so yeah, I'd pick those three. I feel good about those
Yeah.
choices.
Actually, it's funny because I think about 3 or 4 years ago, I was actually supposed to interview Brian Wilson, but
No
sadly
way.
because of his his health, the interview got cancelled, and I'm so regretful about that. But the one thing I really
Yeah,
wanted to ask him is that sort of question, just how did you actually manage to do something that was so adventurous, so out there, but still make
yeah,
it so pleasing to listen to? And it's something
ah,
I think I'll always just question, and I never had the chance to ask him, unless
yeah,
for some miracle he says, "Yeah, I'll come on your
yeah,
Trusty Chords podcast." I don't see it happening,
yeah.
um,
But that
but
no, I think you just said that so well. I mean, you just summed up that record. It's incredible. It's so loved worldwide, but you're just like, how did you do that? And it's such a
yeah,
brave record.
exactly. And for a musician, you can spend hours just trying to crack the code and trying to work out what's going on underneath. But
Yeah,
it's a fool's
yeah,
errand. You just can't do it. Um,
yeah,
and I suppose I should also ask the question of, five songs you can always turn to, whether it be for comfort, for excitement, your five trusty songs. And obviously you mentioned, something from Pet Sounds. Would you be picking something from Pet Sounds for this
yeah,
section?
yeah. I think I have to pick one from Pet Sounds, and it has to be God Only Knows.
Oh, of course. You can't
It's,
go past that one.
I mean, it's just like I don't know what it is. It's got something that like very few songs have for me anyway, personally, where I just put it on and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I immediately feel, I don't know, euphoria. I don't really know what it is. It's like I've just taken a drug. It makes you feel warm, it makes you feel great. You're just like, it's such a beauty. I don't know if it's the chords he uses, the sounds, just and then lyrically, you're just like, that's such a genius song. So that would definitely be there. Like it's just one of my all-time favorites that always makes me feel something. Um, Another song that I think just always gets me, like in the one of the best ways, and it's one of the best songs ever written, in my opinion, is "Yesterday" by the Beatles.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's just like, I think it's still, I don't know if it still is, but I think it has been like the most covered song of all time.
Yep. That's
I
that's
think
the one
that
little
says
fact that I
everything,
always bring out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like because I remember reading that and being like, well, yeah, I've done a cover. Like everyone I know has done a cover. It's such a well crafted and poignant and just like beautiful, beautiful song. So that's definitely in my top five. Um, what's another really good one? Do you know what I would pick? It's like a bit of a curveball, but like, do you know the song Bambaleo by the Gypsy Kings?
I do, yes. Yeah, that,
It's
that, that
it's
is definitely a bit of a
such a
curveball compared to the
vibe.
first two. Yeah.
It is, right? I mean, those two are so, but for me, because we've talked about it on this podcast, like that song sticks with me because of having these family dinners and listening to music and listening to records together. And it just gives me a feeling of like when I put that song on, I'm back at home with my brothers and my mum and dad, and we're all sharing some good food and I like having a laugh. And it's a very special song to me. And it's just got a great energy. Like I've never seen those guys live, but I would love to see them play a show. Um, so that's definitely in there. and then two more. Wow, this is really
It's a tough
difficult.
one, isn't
Maybe
it?
I should do a couple. I should do a couple of Coldplay ones because I picked their records. So I think, not that I don't love the record that this one's on so much, but Fix You,
Mm.
um, that song, X and Y was a great record, but it wasn't my favorite Coldplay record. But Fix You is just, I mean, that's a pretty sensational song. I kind of just remember, just I think it's because I've just been and watched them at Glastonbury, but they finished on that, and you had 120,000 people in the field, and he's playing this incredibly like vulnerable song just by himself, and every single person knows every word, and it's just like you listen to the craft of the song, and you're like, it's so genius. There's like
Mm.
nothing to it. These beautiful verses, chorus, and then this huge build up, and then he strips it down again at the end and gets everyone to sing, and it's just like wow, like this is such a good song.
Totally.
um and yeah, very emotional one, so I'd pick that.
Because I mean, that's
um
definitely one of those songs as well where I think I mean, even if there are people who might have certain views of Coldplay, that's one of those songs where you can't go past it. It's a sort of song that will sort of stop you in your tracks, and you just have to say, you know what, I don't care who you are, this one's worth writing home about. It's such an amazing, well written song, and yeah, it affects everyone whenever they listen to it.
do you know what, that's it, and I just think it's such a beautiful thing, and he wrote that in a very for a sad situation, but it's just like it's a song. I think that what I think sometimes makes a great song like that is when you release it, and it suddenly means so much to so many different people, and it basically
Mm.
takes on a life of its own, and it has its own journey, and that song, the amount of people that will use it for different situations, and I just think like that is a rare and special thing. So yeah, very grateful to them for doing that, and I'm really glad they ended the set on it. It was a real moment.
Of course.
um Okay, number five. I think we should maybe do another curveball or something that's like slightly odd. But I tell you what, oh, I say odd, but like a different choice, a song that will be good. So the one I was going to quickly pick then, which I think is a funny one, is a Kiss song. It's "God Gave Rock and Roll to You,"
Oh yes.
and that is our pre-show song that we put on every time before uh, we get on stage, and it just riles us up. It was also in Bill and Ted, which is one of the best movies of all
Yeah,
time,
I was going to
and
say, I
it's
think
like
that's how
the
a whole
end song.
generation knows them. Yeah.
Yeah. So that song, I don't know, it just has something about it, and it's kind of fun. It's really it's just got something. I don't know what it is, but I love it. And then okay, let me pick a song by an Australian band who
Bit
we
of an
love
honorable
very, very
mention.
much. Yeah, the Ryans. It kind of just like I just feel like with these dudes, like they've just got something that is really exciting, and that we get sent so many bands from fans, which is really cool. Like they're always saying, hey, you should check out this, check out that. And I remember we had a couple of messages from Australian fans, which we were like, wow, we have Australian fans, but they're like, you've got to check out this band, the Rams. And then we're like, okay, this is really cool. And I started listening to their music, and I was just like, these guys are so dope. Like killer melodies, killer lyrics, and like we follow them on their socials. Never got to see them live, but I'm desperate to watch a live show because it looks amazing.
Oh yeah.
And we covered one of their tracks and put it up on socials, and it really like took off, and our fans were like, this is incredible. At first they're like, is this your song? It's so good. And we're like, no, sadly not. But they're such, I think they're going to do some incredible things, and it's like for me, like if there's like a band to watch, it's definitely them. So yeah, hopefully we'll get to Australia and have some beers with them soon, or if they come to the UK, we'd love to hang out and do some stuff together.
Definitely got to make it happen one way or the other. Well, I should say, Matt, I want to say thank you so very much for being generous with your time and also for being part of the Trusty Chords podcast.
Oh, dude, it's such an honor. Thank you for having me and letting me talk far too much. Um, and also for like what you do, dude, because it's really funny. You know, I there's so many outlets to like get music out there, but podcasts like where you can really sit and talk and break things down. It's such a joy to do. And thank you for like spreading the word of music and things people probably won't have heard of. No one's going to really know tours, but what you're giving out our love to the world, and we appreciate you and appreciate what you're doing. So
Uh,
we definitely, when we're in Australia, we owe you some beers and some dinner.
Well, thank you so very much. It's definitely, comments like that from musicians like yourselves, which is the reason I do what I do, which is the whole music game. So thank you so very much for this nice little relationship we've curated here over the last 40 odd minutes.
Yeah, I love it, dude. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Trusty Chords. If you enjoyed this episode, then you really need to thank Matt Weedon for being a great guest. But if you want to extend some gratitude my way, feel free to like, follow, share, and review this podcast on your preferred platform of choice. As always, there's no obligation, but I'm never going to complain if you do so. As always, I'm over on Instagram and Facebook at Trusty Chords Podcast, all one word, and Twitter at Trusty Chords Pod. I've also got the blog on my website, which is tylerjenke.com. That's TYLERJENKE/Trusty Chords Podcast, all one word. You probably know by now what you can find on the site, but you can also find a link to the Buy Me a Coffee platform, where you can throw me a few dollars to keep this podcast running, if you feel so inclined. Lastly, I need to thank Matt Weedon for spending time with me this week for the podcast, and I also need to thank Jerry from How Good for helping organise this chat as well. But once again, thank you kindly for listening, and I hope to see you all again next week as I continue to celebrate music and those that create it.